1978. Wichita, Kansas. The production floors at Cessna and Piper run around the clock. American factories deliver 17,811 general aviation aircraft that year. 14,000 of them are single-engine pistons. A new Cessna 172 costs $33,950. A working mechanic can afford one. A teacher can afford flight lessons in one. The active private pilot count in America stands at 357,000. That world is gone. In 2024, American manufacturers deliver 1,772 piston aircraft to the entire world. A new Cessna 172 starts at $400,000. Active private pilots. Number 174,155, 51% below the 1980 peak, 45 years later. The aviation industry calls this market forces. I have spent years reading the FAA certification records, the manufacturer liability filings, and the actuarial tables. The pattern in those documents is not what the aviation press prints. This is a story about a 40-year sequence of institutional decisions, each framed as reasonable, each pushing the same direction. Together, they compounded into a market the working pilot cannot survive. The mechanism has a name. The money has a number. We are going to cover both. If this is the kind of accounting the aviation establishment would rather not see in public, subscribe to Sky Ranch. We start now. The FAA certifies new airplanes under a regulation called Part 23. It applies to any certified aircraft under 19,000 pounds with 19 or fewer seats. That rule puts a basic flight training Cessna 172 and a high-performance corporate turboprop under identical certification requirements. When software entered the cockpit in the 1990s, the FAA required every line of avionics code to pass DAPO 178 compliance validation. The standard applied equally to an attitude indicator going into a skylane and a full flight management system going into a business jet. Garmin's senior business development manager told AOPA in 2017 that certifying a single avionics product to the full Part 23 fleet costs up to $20 million. Certifying the same product to LSA consensus standards under ASTM costs approximately $2 million. Same unit. That is $18 million in additional cost, transferred directly to the buyer, embedded in the panel price. The type certificate alone for a new clean sheet, certified GA aircraft costs approximately $25 million. Certifying an equivalent aircraft to ASTM LSA standards costs approximately $250,000, 100 times more. That is the entry tax on the certified market. Not a manufacturing cost, not a materials cost. A paperwork cost built into the price of every aircraft that passes through it. The production record from 1978 to 1994 is the experiment result. In 1978, American factories deliver 17,811 GA aircraft. By 1985, production falls to approximately 4,000. In 1994, the year Congress finally acts, total GA deliveries reach 928. That is a 95% collapse in 16 years. Unit aircraft sales fall 95%. Dollar volume falls 90%. The per-aircraft price does not fall with production. It rises because a smaller number of aircraft carries the same fixed certification overhead. When the FAA created the light sport aircraft category in 2004 and moved certification to ASTM consensus standards, 126 new LSA designs reached the market in 7 years. The experimental aircraft fleet grew 143% over 2 decades. Below the certified wall, competition moved at prices working pilots could actually pay. Above it, the major manufacturers built incremental updates to 50-year-old designs and charged $400,000. The certification overhead leaves no room for anything else. The experimental category tells the same story from the outside. Van's aircraft RV series kits have produced more than 10,000 flying aircraft worldwide outside the certified wall at prices a working wage buyer can reach. The experimental community is not a safety shortcut. It is the clearest evidence that the demand for affordable aircraft never disappeared. The certification cost structure redirected that demand away from the certified market. The demand is still there. The wall is what moved it. In 2007, Cessna attempted a return to the affordable trainer market with the 162 Skycatcher, built in China to control costs. Delivery price started at $109,000 and climbed to $149,000 by November 2011. Production ended in 2013. The aircraft, designed to replace the $33,950 Cessna 172P of 1979, shipped from a Chinese factory at $149,000 and lasted 4 years. The market rejected it at that price. There is no lower price available inside the certification wall. The experimental category makes the demand case precisely. Van's aircraft alone has produced more than 10,000 flying RV series aircraft worldwide, none of them certified under Part 23, all built at a fraction of the certified market price. The experimental community did not grow because pilots stopped caring about certified aircraft. It grew because the certified market stopped being financially reachable. The demand is still there. The wall redirected it. The wall did not appear because aviation is uniquely complex. The wall appeared because the FAA applied a rule written for jets to the two-seat trainer it was meant to govern. Every instrument in your panel carries this overhead. The certified airframe carries it in the purchase price. The system bills you for its own architecture, and it does not itemize the invoice. Nobody asked the recreational pilot whether the avionics validation standard governing a business jet's flight management system should also govern the altimeter in a training aircraft. The overhead transferred regardless. That transfer is what the production record shows for the 16 years that followed. The production collapse from 1978 to 1994 is documented in GAMA's annual data book. Nobody disputes the numbers. The dispute is over what caused them. On May 28, 1986, Cessna chairman Russell W. Meyer Jr. issued a statement to United Press International. The statement reads in part, "This is the 6th consecutive year of severely depressed piston sales. Cessna cannot sustain the financial losses from such low production rates." Cessna halted all single-engine piston production that year. Piper Aircraft filed for bankruptcy. The world's largest producer of single-engine aircraft and the world's second largest had both stopped building. The liability clock did not halt with production. In 1993, 7 years after the last Cessna piston rolled off the line, the company still paid $20 million a year in product liability expenses from aircraft built before 1986. It actively defended approximately 200 lawsuits in that year alone. The insurance numbers mark the sequence precisely. In 1978, the peak production year, general aviation manufacturers paid approximately $24 million industry-wide in product liability premiums. By 1985, that figure reached $210 million. That is an 875% increase over 7 years. The per-aircraft liability cost climbed from approximately $50 per airplane in 1962 to $100,000 per airplane by 1988. A 2,000-fold increase in 26 years. Lloyd's of London exited the general aviation liability market during this period. The company said, for the record, that it was prepared to insure the risks of aviation, not the risks of the American legal system. An insurance underwriter prices risk actuarially. When Lloyd's exited the market, the exposure had crossed a threshold where no rational insurer could model it. The legal system had redefined general aviation liability from a risk category into a certainty category. The FAA never updated its regulatory framework to account for the difference. Between 1983 and 1986, Beechcraft Aircraft defended 203 lawsuits at an average cost of $530,000 per case. The NTSB investigated the underlying accidents. It found 0 manufacturing or design defects across all 203 cases. Every accident traced to pilot error or indirect fault. Beechcraft spent approximately $107 million defending accidents. It did not cause. The FAA, the authority responsible for distinguishing legitimate airworthiness claims from litigation abuse, did not intervene. The Cessna 152, the Piper Tomahawk, the Beech Skipper. All 3 primary trainers disappeared from the market by the mid-1980s. Not one has ever returned to production. Congress eventually acts. In 1994, Senator Nancy Kassebaum of Kansas leads the legislative push that becomes the General Aviation Revitalization Act, or GARA. Russell Meyer has promised that if the bill passes, Cessna will restart single-engine production. President Clinton signs GARA. Cessna restarts. GARA fixes the liability problem. The certification overhead stays untouched. Original equipment manufacturer parts pricing stays intact. The compounding cost of a 40-year-old fleet with no affordable certified replacement keeps running. The post-GARA trajectory shows the limit of what GARA could do. From 1994 onward, certified piston production climbs toward a modest recovery. By 2007, worldwide piston deliveries reach approximately 3,279, nowhere near the 1978 figure, but a functioning industry. The 2008 financial crisis collapses that floor. Deliveries fall to 1,334 in 2010. They recover to 1,772 by 2024, roughly 10% of the peak year. GARA removed the liability ceiling. The certification cost floor did not move. The Modification and Replacement Parts Association has documented that original equipment manufacturers increase spare parts prices at approximately 5% annually. In a market where the $25 million certification barrier eliminates affordable certified competition, that compounding runs unchecked. The trainers do not come back. The wall stands. Here is the arithmetic the aviation press has not run in public. A new Cessna 172 in 1979 cost approximately $33,950. Adjusted for general inflation, that equals approximately $145,000 to $150,000 in today's dollars. A new Cessna 172 today starts at $400,000. The gap between the inflation-adjusted price and the current price is approximately $250,000. The airplane is not $250,000 better than its 1979 counterpart. The engine family is the same Lycoming lineage. Almost nothing structural has changed since the 1960s. Certificated useful load is essentially identical to the 1979 version. That $250,000 represents the certification overhead transferred directly to you. The avionics validation tax lives in your instrument panel. 4 decades of original equipment manufacturer parts, price increases, compounding at 5% annually with no affordable certified competitor to check them, arrive in every annual inspection bill. None of that overhead built a better airframe. You are not buying a better airplane, you are paying the system's bill. The certification cost is the mechanism. The 50-year-old fleet is the evidence it worked. Which surprises you more, that the gap is $250,000, or that it took this long for anyone to calculate it publicly? Leave it in the comments. Tens of thousands of pilots have already run this calculation without naming it. The average age of the FAA-registered general aviation fleet exceeds 50 years. The fleet did not get old because pilots stopped caring about new aircraft. It aged because the institutional cost structure made it economically irrational to replace 1970s-era airframes with anything certified and affordable. A 1978 Cessna 172 with a recent engine overhaul sells today for approximately $85,000. That buyer is not settling. That buyer is reading the market correctly. The private pilot count confirms the same logic from the demand side. 357,000 active private pilot certificates in 1980, 174,155 in 2025, 51% below the peak, 45 years later. A private pilot certificate in 2025 costs $8,000 to $21,000. The rental aircraft used for that training carries the $400,000 purchase price of the certified fleet in its hourly rate. Flight training costs are not independent of certified aircraft pricing. They flow directly from it. Approximately 14,000 pilots per year were allowing their FAA medical certificates to lapse before Basic Med passed in 2016. The reason was not medical unfitness. The aviation medical examiner process was expensive, administratively hostile, and statistically unsupported as a safety measure. 8 years of Basic Med data now show the medical incapacitation accident rate is statistically identical between Basic Med pilots and those holding traditional third-class certificates. A barrier with no measurable safety return stood for decades. That is not an oversight. That is a system functioning as designed. Now, the fuel. 100LL, leaded aviation gasoline, has powered piston general aviation since 1921. It is the only leaded transportation fuel remaining in the United States. Cars moved to unleaded fuel in the 1990s. The FAA released its draft transition plan on January 12, 2026, targeting full phase out of 100LL by December 31, 2030. Approximately 167,000 American aircraft currently rely on it. There is a single global supplier of tetraethyl lead, the additive that makes 100LL function, and that supplier has indicated an eventual end of production. GAMI received FAA approval in 2022 for a 100-octane unleaded replacement called G100UL, which works across the existing piston fleet without aircraft modification. As of today, distribution remains limited. No universally available drop-in replacement exists at national scale. The people who built this system did not set out to price working pilots out of the sky. The FAA wrote Part 23 to ensure safety. Congress passed the liability framework that produced the litigation crisis. The Eagle Initiative wants cleaner air. Each rule serves a genuine interest. None of it was written with a calculator open to the 1979 Cessna price list. The aggregate cost of all of it landing on the same fleet is the bill that arrived anyway. A 50-year-old fleet, a $400,000 replacement aircraft, a fuel transition with a hard 2030 deadline, and no resolved distribution network. This is the position the working pilot occupies in 2026. What was lost in this sequence is worth naming once. In 1970, a farmer with $5,000 and a desire to fly could actually do it. Flight schools ran two-seaters at prices a working wage supported. A mechanic in Wichita owned a 4-seat Cessna and flew his family to a grass strip 2 states over on a long weekend. None of that required family wealth. It required a functional market. General aviation at its peak was not an affluent hobby. It was practical infrastructure maintained by ordinary people who understood the machines and could afford them. That version of the sky closed gradually, without ceremony, between 1979 and now. The FAA is not the villain. The manufacturers are not the villains. No individual in this story drafted a memo titled, "Price out the working pilot by 2030. The aggregate effect of individually defensible decisions, unaccountable for one another in combination, produced a system the working pilot cannot survive. Institutional costs do not announce themselves. They compound. The mechanic's verdict is this. The 1978 Cessna 172 at $85,000 is not a compromise. It is the rational response to a certified market priced at $400,000 by overhead you did not create. Fly it. Maintain it. Know every airworthiness directive on that airframe before the ink dries. The new Cessna 172 at $400,000 is not a premium product. It is a certification invoice with a wing spar attached. If Sky Ranch is where you come to run these numbers, honestly, subscribe. We do not publish what the industry wants you to hear. One question before you close this out. Is the new Cessna 172 an airplane, Or is it 40 years of regulatory billing with wings on it? One or the other? Tell me in the comments.